Let's give you an update on developments in the Middle East. And there's been a tense calm in Gaza as the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel has held into a third day. This is the scene live in Rafah in Gaza. Hamas has confirmed it'll release the next Israeli hostages on Saturday in exchange for Palestinians held by Israel. Well, the UN said more than 900 aid trucks had entered the territory on Monday. President Trump's expressed doubt that the truce will hold through all of the three phases. Well, one of his executive orders reverse sanctions on extremist Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. Well, to get the very latest, I'm joined now by our Middle East correspondent, Yolan Nell, who is in Jerusalem. So day 3 and the ceasefire is still holding. First of all, let me ask you about the reaction to that on the ground where you are.
Yeah, I mean, there is on the positive side this news about the humanitarian aid going into Gaza, the amount of it really exceeding expectations. We've also had this new Hamas statement reaffirming that the next Israeli hostages, that's expected to be 4 women hostages, will be released on Saturday in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners being released from Israeli jails. But at the same time, there is great nervousness about discussions that are due to begin in 2 weeks' time on the next stage of the deal, which should end the war completely in Gaza and bring home the remaining Israeli hostages, the majority of those still being held by Hamas there. And President Trump didn't really allay those fears when he was asked by reporters in the Oval Office if he thought that all 3 phases of this ceasefire and hostage release deal that he has been taking credit for would be implemented. He said to reporters, "It's not our war, it's their war. I'm not confident." But at the same time, we have been hearing from his new special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who was also very much involved in those indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas. And he was indicating his ongoing commitment to this deal being implemented, outlining what he said was President Trump's bold vision for the Middle East and seeking to ultimately build new relations between Israel and other Arab countries, dangling out there the possibility that there could be a normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia down the road.
And while you are there, Yolande, any more reaction? Of course, you've mentioned Donald Trump there, but any more reaction to his presidency now he's officially become president again?
I mean, certainly we had comments from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that, of course, the US being Israel's closest ally, he is seeking to build on that close alliance. What has really made a lot of headlines here in the Israeli media is another decision by the Trump administration to rescind US sanctions on extremist Jewish settlers that were introduced by the Biden administration, really amid growing international frustration about what's been seen as Israel's failure to rein in this rise in extremist violence against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. And just hours after that was rescinded, we had the news coming from the north of the West Bank that there had been a new settler rampage that had gone on, with videos now coming out showing masked men going around setting fire to Palestinian cars and property in a couple of villages.
OK, Yolan Nell, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on all of those different developments related to the ceasefire. Well, let's now cross to Tel Aviv and speak to political analyst Akiva Elder, who's also a contributor to the Haaretz newspaper. Welcome to BBC News. This ceasefire is now into a third day. Donald Trump's not confident it will get through all of the 3 stages. What's the mood where you are in terms of that? Do people that you're speaking to, particularly say in the Israeli government, believe that it will last those 3 phases?
Well, what we are looking at right now, Ginny, is, I could say, it's Trump's trap. Netanyahu is trapped between President Trump, who has great appetite to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. He cannot forgive the committee for offering it, giving it to President Obama, and why not to him? And he see here an opportunity, a unique opportunity to make peace in the Middle East. And the return of the captives is just the appetizer. He, as your correspondent just mentioned, he is interested in a comprehensive peace to bring in Saudi Arabia and to complete the Abraham Accords that he managed to pass 4 years ago, just before the American elections, where he was defeated. On the other hand, Netanyahu is trapped by the radical right, the zealots, Ben Gvir, who has resigned from the government, and Smotrich, who is still there, but he's holding a gun to Netanyahu's head, and he said, if we will not go back to Gaza, and this is something that I believe we have to watch very carefully, because according to the Israeli Declaration of Independence, the vision of Zionism is to reach out to our neighbors for peace. Now, what he's actually demanding is resumption of the war.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Elder. So you talk about the pressures on Mr. Netanyahu from various angles. How safe is his position, do you think?
I believe that he will not be able, to eat this cake and have it. I think that we're looking at a countdown because he has gambled on both Trump, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir. And it seems that none of them is willing to deliver the goods without a price tag that Netanyahu cannot afford.
Okay.
He cannot afford to offer a Palestinian state to the Palestinian Authority. He doesn't even think about considering allowing the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen, to take over the responsibility on humanitarian aid to Gaza. On the other hand, he is still claiming that he can bring a total victory in this war. So I think that he is in a complete deadlock, let alone the trial that the three judges who are waiting for him and the International Criminal Court arrest warrants that are not going anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, challenging times for Mr. Netanyahu, as you have outlined there. Akiva Elder, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Eugene. Pleasure.
Well, let's look at the aid situation now that ceasefire has begun. Let's speak to Jorge Moreira da Silva, the Executive Director of UN Operations for Gaza. It's good to have you with us on BBC News at what must be an incredibly busy time for your agency. Just bring us up to date on where we are in terms of aid now reaching the most needed parts of Gaza.
Thank you, Regina. As you said, the UNOPS works in 100 countries and particularly focusing these days in Gaza. And we've seen in the last 2 days a significant increase of aid being provided and delivered. And this is fundamental. We know that Gaza has faced an unprecedented level of suffering, human suffering, humanitarian aid tragedy. So it's important that we use these 42 days to provide all aid that is needed.
Do you know how many trucks have gone through then? Because that's one of the questions, really. There is some aid going through, but is it enough?
Well, the Secretary General said that in the first day, we managed to get 630 trucks, which is more than the minimum that was planned in the ceasefire. But let me give you one example from my own agency. We are procuring and delivering fuel into Gaza. You know that fuel is fundamental to everything that happens in Gaza, from health to the bakeries to the houses. And we managed in the first day of the ceasefire to bring 1 million liters of fuel to Gaza. So that so that everyone understands, this represents 10 times more than what we've been managed to bring on average in the previous months. So in just one day, we brought 10 times what we were able to bring before. Why? Because finally, the security and the political conditions have allowed us to bring the fuel. And this is a fundamental element. The UN is ready to provide the support for people if the security and the political conditions allow. And that's why we shall do whatever is possible during these 42 days to provide humanitarian aid, but also to prepare for early recovery and reconstruction, knowing that 70% of the infrastructure in Gaza is destroyed. And this represents more than $18.5 billion of damage on infrastructure. So let's provide aid, short-term, humanitarian aid, but let's prepare for early recovery and reconstruction.